it really made me reflect on my experience at school specifically, and just how kind of inadequate, it had been as far as understanding those things. It shouldn't fall to the people who are affected by prejudice to also bear the responsibility of undoing that prejudice and trying to kind of change the issue.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Big Fat Question podcast. I'm Anna, and today's Big Fat Question: how much do we learn if we don't have to? To help me answer this question, I'm delighted to be joined by actor and activist Mr. Will Poulter. Will, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Anna, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm a fan of the work you do, so this is cool.
Thank you. So how much do we learn if we don't have to? So a lot of people, I think, have quite a bad relationship with learning because they associate education with their school experience. If you're being bullied, for example, you're probably not going to be thinking about osmosis. Like when your teacher's telling you about it, you're just going to be trying to get through the day.
Sure.
And your sort of educational journey has run quite parallel to your acting career. And now you're an ambassador for both the anti-bullying campaign in the UK and the Black curriculum. What is it about these causes which are about sort of enhancing the educational institutions and schools and improving the lives of students that you find so passionate about, that you're passionate about?
Yeah, it's a really good point you make, Anna. That actually something that is going to kind of impede people's ability to experience school in the way that they ought to, which I think should be characterized by enjoyment and it also being productive. It is bullying and a culture where bullying is sort of not necessarily addressed in the way that it ought to be. I found school hard enough as it was, and I found tackling subject matters like osmosis difficult enough already without having to contend. Without having to contend with the kind of immense sort of mental health challenge of being bullied. And so I think one of the reasons that I became attracted to what my friend Alex Holmes did in setting up Anti-Bullying Pro in association with the Diana Award was, I think, he identified the need to actually change the cultures within schools and make sure that school was first and foremost a kind of safe and enjoyable place as much as possible before and in and around all of the learning that is kind of mandatory. This sort of headline question of what you sort of have to learn or what you learn if you don't have to, I think is really, really relevant when it comes to looking at, the national curriculum, for example, and, the things that are embedded in our curriculum and that are made kind of mandatory. But I think it's a big oversight if we're not also considering kind of what is mandatory from a social perspective at school, and I think making sure that there is a kind of zero tolerance policy to bullying is one thing, but also making sure that we're safeguarding students and we're also providing them with a kind of productive and sort of socially responsible environment to learn in. That also ought to be something that I think we give just as much attention to. I think it's kind of naive to think that we can send young people off to school during their formative years, during these critical developmental periods of their lives, and expect them to learn everything we think they ought to know, and then not also ensure that in the process we're taking care of their sort of mental well-being and making sure that things like bullying aren't eroding at their overall experience.
Yeah, no, well said. And obviously you've been an ambassador for bullying campaign for 12 years now or so.
Just about that, 11 or something like that. Yeah, there or there.
You must have seen it sort of progress as that's gone on.
Mm.
And now, amazingly, 4 out of 5 schools have reported a decrease in bullying since the anti-bullying ambassador campaign. What is it about how it works and how it's been implemented that you think's made it so effective in schools?
I think it's really empowered young people in order to kind of shape the cultures within their schools for themselves. I think it's done a very good job of recognizing the power of like peer-to-peer mentorship, and also the idea that an anti-bullying ambassador kind of role models, I think, really kind of responsible behavior for younger students. And teachers have an enormous, my sister's a teaching assistant, and by proxy I kind of have some awareness of just what an enormous level of responsibility teachers and educators have, and I think that the issue of bullying is so nuanced and complex and multifaceted that I think what the anti-bullying program has kind of identified is that even in the event that a young person might not feel comfortable talking to a parent or a friend or a teacher, by having someone who is sort of officiated as an anti-bullying ambassador and has actually enrolled in the program and has gone through the training, there is someone within the school who is clearly kind of signposted as someone who can support. And that's been really, really effective. And I think it's also kind of destigmatized, I think, some of the shame or embarrassment that exists around anything that affects someone's mental health. And I kind of always sort of categorize bullying, within that. It's destigmatized, I think, bullying as an issue. And it's allowed young people, I think, to feel freed up to gain support and to talk about it. And also by having anti-bullying ambassadors kind of present within the school, shaping the school culture, being, visible to everyone within the school, I think that it serves as a constant reminder that bullying is not something that's tolerated, but more importantly, on the flip side of that, kindness and inclusivity are the things that are being promoted. And, I've been fortunate over the last sort of 10 plus years to visit schools and to speak to young people who are enrolled in the program and to see its effects. And I can quite honestly tell you, when you walk into a school that has the program in effect, there is so often a different feeling about the place, and it's a sort of, it's a front-footed, proactive approach to bullying. It's not reactive. It's not, oh, in the event that someone's bullied, we'll deal with the issue. It's let's lead with kindness and inclusivity. Let's lead with an awareness about diversity and awareness about mental health. Let's encourage people to be kind to one another and look out for each other and not be bystanders. All of these sort of foundational principles to the anti-bullying kind of rhetoric. And to walk into a school environment and see that, and also see how that translates to younger people enjoying their learning experience and having a better time socially, it really does beg the question why it's not something that every school has to do. And I really admire that about the work.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting what you say about sort of it not being reactive. I think with sort of especially secondary school students, it's quite complex when it comes to authority, and the fact that the ambassadors themselves are the students, I think that really makes it sort of work really well. And you said before about you've been lucky enough to go to lots of schools over the 12 years. I think it's really easy these days for sort of the older generation to bash young people and Gen Z. I think saying they're woke and always on social media and all this stuff. And I used to teach like 16 and 17-year-olds, and I remember before I'd go into work, I'd just be so nervous. Like I'd be like, oh, my shoes cool enough? Like,
no.
TikTok, like, is TikTok even cool coming out of my mouth? But then you go and teach these students and you realize how deep and interesting and caring they are. I'd love to know what you enjoy about seeing these students face to face, and maybe if there's anything that surprised you about a certain age group or cohort of students.
Yeah, gosh, that's so interesting. I think for me, there've been occasions where I've been lucky enough to do some workshops with young people, and I think one of the things that ought not to have surprised me, because drama and performance was definitely a way of me kind of purging certain emotions, or being able to kind of I think deconstruct some of the issues that I might have been having. It was like an outlet, simply put, for my kind of mental health struggles while I was at school. Still, I've been surprised by just how powerful of a tool that has been when it's come to addressing subjects like bullying. And when doing workshops initially with groups of young people, and I would say normally it's people kind of in their sort of like their young teen years, so I would say sort of maybe a little bit younger than the group that you were referring to, maybe kind of 13, 14. There's some hesitancy around the idea of performing. Not everyone that I've done workshops with necessarily has drama in their school or has done it before, but by the end of these workshop sessions, the idea of kind of being brought together with people under the guise of anti-bullying as a kind of leading sort of subject matter, and creating pieces to sort of better understand why bullying happens or how it affects other people, or really broadly speaking, why it's important to treat people kind of more kindly and with more consideration. I'm always kind of amazed at just how incredible the pieces are. Sometimes I walk into those workshops and I'm like, gosh, I feel bad that I feel like I'm sort of forcing young people into this. And I feel like, I'm putting them on the spot and they don't even necessarily want to. And then at the end of it all, they may not even necessarily feel like they've kind of had any real meaningful kind of sense of understanding of the subject through this medium. But inevitably what happens is that you see a group of people who aren't always necessarily like close, or wouldn't even necessarily kind of class themselves as like best friends. And even over the course of a short period of time, you see a kind of camaraderie develop amongst these young people, and what they produce out of the session is so amazing and always so moving. And it just really kind of drives home the point that bullying is unfortunately something that is so widespread and affects people so deeply. And that when given the opportunity to kind of address it, and when that stigmatization is kind of lifted, young people have a really great understanding of not just only that, but also what the antithesis of bullying behavior is, and that it is the way to go. I think that no one sort of, I don't believe anyone kind of sincerely wants to bully, or wants that to define, the school environment. And so, yeah, I think with that age group, I'm just surprised at how the hesitancy and the initial awkwardness kind of very quickly dissipates, and just how great the work is that comes from it.
Yeah, I think drama is just amazing for that. Like, I mean, my drama experience kind of stopped at GCSE, but even then, you've just got this really even it's like the two ends of the spectrum, because you've got like really shy kids, but also the kind of the naughty kids. And when we all come together and do drama, it's just like, God, it's just a different side to them, and it's really nice that you can provide that outlet for them. I think that's great. And yeah, talking of that and talking about you and drama, so you've obviously been in the spotlight from a young age, and Son of Rambo, I guess, were you like straight back to school after that? Like you obviously did the film then?
Yeah, so I remember I was 12. So that was my first job. And yeah, kind of reintegrating, with school was all right, actually. It was relatively easy. I was grateful to have the kind of support of my family. And I'm so sorry, by the way. There's in America, they're testing a national like alarm system on the phones.
That's all right, don't worry.
Case of emergency. So sorry, I can take that back to previous answer.
Okay, I can't hear anything, don't worry.
Okay. Oh, good. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Son of Rambo was my first job when I was 12.
Yeah.
And reintegrating with school was was actually relatively easy, and I'm really grateful to my drama teacher, Laura Lawson. She was kind of, you know, pivotal in both my career and also, I think, just allowing me to feel a lot more secure and happy at school, you know, with the outlet that she provided me and the belief she instilled in me and the opportunity she gave me. So that was massive. And also, you know, I'm grateful just to my friends at that time. They didn't really kind of treat me any differently, which was appreciated, you know. And the irony of, I guess, the Son of Rambo experience is that, having not been particularly happy at school and you know, and kind of having experienced a little bit of bullying, I I I was actually playing a bully in the film. So it was kind of interesting to sort of play a bully, and then, you know, a few years later, kind of find myself, you know, involved in anti-bullying work. But for the most part, integration back in school was fairly smooth, and I, you know, credit my teachers and my students, fellow students at that time for that.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you said about the bullying thing, because I was going to ask you that actually about, you know, obviously he plays a bully, but then as the film goes on, you realize that he himself has been bullied by, you know, his older brother. And me and my dad love that film so much, so I'm just going to say that now. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, I was looking at your interview on the One Show, and they spoke about it already, and I was gutted. They stole it from me, and it'll be so you know, blow your mind about it. But anyway, yeah. So you've been in spotlight from a young age, and unfortunately, you know, not everybody's an artist, but everyone's a critic. And I've always felt really sorry for actors who have to kind of play particularly nasty roles, because there's always going to be like some people that can't dissociate the actor from the role, especially, you know,
Right.
so well. Obviously in Narnia, you played Eustace. You were really young, and you know, he was pretty annoying character. And you have
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And then obviously as you got a bit older, the sort of more darker roles, such as in Detroit, and you played a racist cop. Is there any advice that you would give to younger Will, or he maybe received, or you wish he'd received, about dealing with hurtful comments? And you know, this might also echo to other people that might be experiencing something similar.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing you touch on, Anna. I mean, I think that, you know, I'd be lying if I said that concerns around people conflating, you know, who I am on screen with who I am, you know, in real life. What was or wasn't an issue. Like it definitely is, and certainly when it comes to playing a bully or playing a character as hateful and problematic and ignorant as the, you know, racist police officer that I played in Detroit, you know, concerns around people thinking that I might kind of harbor any of those sort of characteristics myself in real life was definitely an anxiety of mine. And I think that when it comes to kind of, you know, any kind of like negative criticism, especially in this where social media is so kind of, it feels ever present, and it feels like it has such a huge impact on how, you know, society is shaped. You know, one does have to kind of, I think, protect themselves against, you know, the potential impact of that negativity. And I really empathize with young people, you know, who are enrolled in education or might be experiencing, you know, bullying or any form of prejudice, because, you know, naturally your mind goes to what it must be like to experience that, one, in person, and then two, have it carry over, you know, into the online space, where I think the anonymity that people are afforded, you know, obviously means that the level of vitriol can be kind of a lot higher and a lot worse. And you know, I feel very kind of fortunate that I didn't really go to school while social media was as rife as it is now. I think that the advice that I would give to anyone who is struggling with any kind of negative aspect of their interactions with social media, I would really try and practice kind of limiting yourself to a period of time in the day when you interact with it, and then kind of detach as much as possible. the reality of social media is that it is addictive, and it's kind of constructed based on models of addiction. And it's really, really, I think, hard genuinely to, sort of detach from it and take yourself away from it without feeling like you're missing out, or, you're being sort of deprived of something. I think that when it comes to like really negative comments, one thing I would say is, the block and report features are there for a reason. Anti-Bullying Pro actually does a lot of work with the various different social media platforms, and there's some really useful information available on the Anti-Bullying Pro if you go on their social media channels, both on Twitter and Instagram. There's information about cyberbullying and about reporting or how to deal with negative comments and abuse online. And yeah, just more generally, also understanding that, I think the negativity that is being, sent to you online, or that if you're the target of kind of some kind of abuse online, it's important to recognize that what happens online isn't necessarily, similarly to how what you see, when an actor plays a character doesn't necessarily reflect how they are in reality. I think the same exists for what happens online. It's really important that we don't take whatever appears online to be factual all the time, and certainly not to take it personally. Although that's really, really hard. And I can kind of, relate to that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I feel like social media is very much everyone's opinion on everything all of the time, which is definitely not a healthy thing to be consuming, especially as a young person.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, when they leave school, bullying gets a lot easier. They kind of find the tribe and find your way. But for many others, especially those who aren't white Caucasian, it's a lot of people experience not really feeling like they can be themselves in the workplace, and obviously experience imposter syndrome. And I just wanted to talk about it. And October is Black History Month, of course.
Yes.
And before I go on to it, obviously, I just want to acknowledge that obviously we are two white people talking about this. But I think when it comes to allyship, our role in the conversation is to sort of use a privilege that we have to be able to listen and support Black communities. And it shouldn't be up to the victims of racism to be the ones to try and solve it.
100%.
And you talk about this beautifully in your piece for the Black curriculum. And obviously Black curriculum's aims are about embedding Black history into the national curriculum. Why was this such an important goal for you? And obviously, as allies, we're always learning. And what's the most important thing you've sort of learned in your years as an ambassador?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Black Curriculum is such an incredible organization, founded by my friend Lavinia Stennett. And what Lavinia and her team at the Black Curriculum are actively doing, as you said, is helping to kind of update and improve the national curriculum with regards to improving the rate of factual history, and specifically by embedding Black history into the national curriculum. And what Lavinia identified, and what is kind of an unavoidable fact of the current education system, is that Black communities are totally overlooked and aren't incorporated into the curriculum outside of the subject of slavery and oppression. And that's especially problematic. Not only for Black students does that I think create a really kind of harmful image and a very kind of inaccurate image of what Black history is, but I think it also massively overlooks all of the many incredible contributions to British society that the Black community has made. And it's really quite a shameful reality that we continue to teach this version of history to young people, and we continue to shape inaccurate and potentially harmful, or definitely harmful impressions of the Black community through our education system. My involvement with the Black curriculum, I think you know, came about sort of partly because of my involvement with the film Detroit, actually, and playing a racist police officer. And as part of that process, I was privileged enough to have a series of kind of educational sessions with a woman called Ziza Delgado, who's an expert in African American history and ethnicity studies. And she really provided me with, you know, what I felt was the sort of education that I should have got while I was at school. And I was only, you know, getting, because I was privileged enough to be given the responsibility of playing this role, and in turn the opportunity to learn, you know, history in a kind of revised way and in a more honest and accurate way. And in the process, you know, I learned, I think, a lot more about the not only just the, you know, prejudice and the injustices suffered by the Black community, but also critically, as part of the same side of that coin, you know, understanding a little bit better my own privilege as a white person, and what white privilege, you know, looked like. And that was really, really educational for me. And it kind of set me on a course of wanting to unpack my privilege a little bit more. And in the process of understanding kind of my unearned privilege, understanding the undeserved prejudice that so many, you know, Black people have been historically the subject of. And it really made me reflect on my experience at school specifically, and just how kind of inadequate, you know, it had been as far as understanding those things and understanding white supremacy as a system, and to find or to come into contact with the Black curriculum. I felt an organization that was doing, you know, the best possible job of addressing the issue at the root, which I think is, you know, while people are being educated, you know, in order to try and, I think, genuinely affect change within society as far as it relates to, you know, racism and, you know, race-related equality. They were meeting the issue at the root, which is when we educate young people, and trying to make sure that we don't continue to educate generations of young people in this same kind of outdated way, and therefore continue to see the same problems and social ills, you know, replicated time after time. And it's amazing the work they're doing. They've also produced a series of books that seek to educate kind of young people about Black history from a young age, and they have a number of deliverables and materials available on their website. And if your school is interested in using some of their materials and incorporating some of their learning resources as part of history classes, or any other subject for that matter, do go online and do get in contact. They have some really, really great resources that you can benefit from.
That's great. Yeah. And they do teacher training as well, I believe, and
Yes.
workshops in schools as well. For people who obviously are part of an educational institution, obviously they can sort of work to embed this into their school or university. What is the most useful thing that someone can do that's listening to this that isn't part of an educational institution? Is it sort of just social media? Is it petitions? How can we sort of help with this mission?
You made a really good point, Anna, earlier, which is that, you know, as part of practicing, I think, allyship, and the concept of being an ally is a complex one, because I think, you know, as a white person, you can't necessarily label yourself as an ally to the Black community. Allyship is something that you strive to, and it's for other people that you seek to be an allyship with to define you as an ally. And you said quite poignantly that it shouldn't fall to the people who are affected by prejudice to also bear the responsibility of undoing that prejudice and trying to kind of change the issue. As white people who have an unearned privilege, it's incumbent on us to try and address the problem that ultimately, as white people, we're kind of responsible for having created, and that is, I think, how we stand the best chance of being, an ally. There are so many incredible books and resources and materials and across a range of different mediums out there and available to people. And I think that by starting with those things and approaching any materials that relate to race and identity as far as it relates to race with an open-mindedness and with a willingness to educate yourself and improve your knowledge with a kind of level of humility, I think is really, really important. I would recommend, just off the top of my head, Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, I think is a absolutely fantastic book. I would also say that Ibram X. Kendi's books are fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah, I love him.
Yeah. I would also say, and I don't want to mispronounce Layla's name now. Layla F. Saad, I believe, is her last name. I have to check on that.
Yeah.
But her book is absolutely fantastic. And indeed, a lot of the materials available from the Black curriculum are really, really fantastic in that regard, as far as, I think starting to maybe learn some of the things that you might have learned at school, but from a new perspective and from what is a more kind of fact-based, unbiased and sort of truthful perspective, quite honestly. Those are I think some of the kind of first steps that people can take, and it can kind of set you on a path, I think, of kind of re-educating yourself, because I think to a large degree, a lot of the things that we think about ourselves in relation to race have been so kind of firmly embedded in us and are so insidious, and not only are not only kind of hardwired because we learned them from a young age, but they've also continued to shape society and how we've approached virtually everything. And particularly as a white person, I think that, one of the privileges that comes with being white is that you aren't put in a position to even think about your ethnicity, because whiteness is so often the default setting for how you navigate through life. And I think to just stop for a moment and consider what it might be like to live in a world where whiteness isn't always the default setting, and actually how your ethnicity and your skin color changes virtually everything, and how you navigate virtually every different, scenario day to day, is kind of like an important sort of first step to take and to address. And kind of all of the books that I've mentioned definitely kind of at one point or another address that as a concept.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. And then I'll definitely write some of those down. Finally, I think we might have time for just one more really quick question. I'll go for the easier question because I don't want to have to put you on the spot. But because I have this rare opportunity to chat to you, and I absolutely love films. I think films are, a great and powerful tool for change, and they're amazing. What is a film that you think tells an important story that you think everyone should watch? And you're not allowed to say Guardians of the Galaxy 3, even though
no, that's fair enough. One of the films that had a really profound impact on me when I was growing up is Bend It Like Beckham.
Oh yeah.
And I think because it was a film that challenged stereotypes, I think that brown women are not only underrepresented on screen, but also behind the camera. And it really spoke to, I think, British culture in a kind of new and especially sort of updated way for the time that it kind of came out. And it challenged stereotypes of stereotypes for both ethnicity and I think gender. And I loved the film, and it was a film that I watched, and only retroactively have I looked back at and thought, wow, if there were 10 of those every year, you'd like to think that society would be just that little bit smarter, that little bit more empathic, that little bit more better for it. And I think that, as an actor, I don't want to lose sight of the reality of my job, or the ceiling that hangs over my head. Like, I'm not a activist, but I am someone who aspires to I think at least collaborate and be in association with the people who are affecting real social change. And I'm really lucky that I'm in a position with my platform to be able to kind of draw attention to the people who are doing the real work. But with that being said, I do think that, to your point, there is an opportunity with films and with television programs and performance and art across a range of mediums to make sure that we are kind of shaping perspectives and hopefully kind of encouraging at least more sort of responsible ways of thinking, and at best affecting social change. And it's a huge privilege to work with anyone who seeks to do that and wants to contribute to conversations and try and affect change in that way.
Will, thank you so much for being here, and it was a pleasure to listen and learn from you. And yeah, just so grateful for all the work that you're doing on your platform as well, all the activism that you're doing. And yeah, everybody check out the Black Curriculum on the website and the anti-bullying campaign. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Anna, thank you so much for the work you do as well. I think this is a really great platform. We need more sort of more things like this, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to come on. Yeah, please do check out the Black Curriculum and Anti-Bullying Pro. They do some really incredible work.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much, everyone.